It's the culmination of over 6 months' work for pupils at Hurst Park Middle School in Ashington. And it's all because of a unique partnership between the school, the Wansbeck Education Enterprise Network and IHC Engineering Business Limited, based in Riding Mill in Northumberland. The pupils were on the beach in New Biggin to test their 2 model ploughs, which have been developed as part of a 2-term project, which IHC have run with the school.
The brief was to make maths more interesting, and I think engineering does make maths more interesting. This project we designed for the kids to make a cable plough, which is a sort of mainstay product that IHC Engineering Business makes. So it was for them to design a concept all the way through, using maths a lot of the time, to design a plough that's going to dig a trench on the beach.
The trip to New Biggin to conduct the final tests on the ploughs designed by the students came after an intensive period of classroom work. IHC took part in the initiative after an approach from Go Wansbeck. Together they were looking to create a project that would benefit the pupils and add value to their curriculum by introducing a business into the classroom environment.
What we wanted to do was have a project where a business came in to work with the schools, but along the curriculum. So what we chose to do was, in mathematics, for 2 terms, to look at what these children would actually be learning, and then to impose an engineering project on top of that. So it wasn't additional to the curriculum, it wasn't extra, all it did was add value and strength to what was actually being taught, but in a real life context.
Initially, the pupils, working with engineers from IHC, set about designing their sea ploughs on paper and then creating a prototype in cardboard. The course was deliberately created to challenge the pupils who were taking part and to ensure that it encompassed key areas of the curriculum like mathematics, science and technology.
Ultimately, it's always going to be hard. There's always that leap between what you learn in the maths classroom and how that actually relates to the real world. You don't really understand it, and that's what an engineer has to do. Has to take the maths and have to go, well, how are you actually going to make this? So I think for any age student, it's a bit of a concept to overcome, and I think that's hopefully what we're trying to teach them here, is that yes, they can come up with a great idea, but if they don't sit and think, oh well, how are we going to bend that bit of metal or that bit of cardboard, and how are we going to stick that bit together, that's the really important part, which hopefully they're learning today, which they don't usually learn about in a maths lesson. You don't usually go, oh, you'd use this formula, but how would you make it? There's not usually that sort of aspect to it.
The cardboard ploughs were then tested in a paddling pool filled with polystyrene in order to replicate the conditions at the bottom of the ocean. Following these trials, the pupils then worked on developing their initial designs even further before presenting them to the engineers, who decided to take 2 forward to be built in miniature, in steel and using the exact measurements provided. IHC Engineering Business designs world-leading equipment for the offshore oil and gas, telecoms, renewables and defence industries, amongst others. IHC Engineering Business were a founding member of Subsea Northeast, a cluster of subsea firms who work collectively to raise the profile of the regional sector and attract new talent to the subsea engineering industry. Their chairman is Tony Trapp, who first agreed to work with Go Wansbeck on this project. He's hopeful it might inspire 1 or 2 of the students involved to consider a career in engineering, as the industry struggles to attract a high calibre of new engineers.
Certainly over the last few years, one of the key inhibitors to our growth has been the lack of skilled people. Very difficult to get hold of skilled engineers. Engineering has been a bit in the doldrums for decades actually, throughout most of my career. But just in the last 5 years or so, people have started to appreciate us. Much more demand for engineers, made it very difficult for us to expand and get enough clever engineers.
Once IHC had created the 2 miniature sea ploughs, they underwent a series of tests at the beach. Some were more successful than others, and the pupils were encouraged to improvise and make improvements on the day. Finally, the trenches that were created were measured in order to provide some data to analyse which design worked best. The pupils certainly felt the project had been a worthwhile exercise.
It's kind of fun. It's fun. I think it's worth coming out with this weather to do it.
What about you?
I think it's kind of good that we're doing stuff like this, so we're getting to do more stuff with maths and science and all that.
When you were designing them, you had to include loads of measurements and stuff, and we're better at adding up the 3D shapes and isometric drawings and stuff. We're better at all that now.
And it wasn't just the pupils that believed the project had been a success.
I think they enjoyed it. They really enjoyed going down to the beach and having a look at the trenches they'd cut. I think they really got a buzz out of actually it was their concept, their idea, this is, and we finally made it, and it's actually done what they wanted it to do, and I think that it really seems to have brought a sense of achievement for them, which is something that I think is good for their learning process.
It's a culture change. It's making the kids realise that they can actually achieve their goal of getting into engineering and bringing on the science and the maths. And practical experiences like this, it means so much for the children to actually get out of the classroom and actually see for real how to work out in the field. So yeah, this has been a brilliant project and the school deserve great credit.
Following the trials on the beach, the pupils were taken to Newcastle College to hold a trade-style event where industry professionals were invited to view the 2 ploughs that had been built and meet the teams behind them. This was the pupils' opportunity to explain to those working in the subsea sector how their plough had been developed and what its capabilities were.
I think meeting people who they've never talked to before is a really good experience for them. Things like for job interview prep and stuff, at the end of the day they're not going to know these people who they're meeting and talking to, and it can only stand them in good stead.
Following this event, the industry professionals were asked to vote on which team they felt had developed the best plough during the 9-month course. The winner was announced at an awards presentation evening.
There were 2 votes in it. One team secured 7 votes from the judges, one team secured 5 votes. The winning team is HPEC.
Over 30 other schools in the Wansbeck region have been working on business-related courses through the Wansbeck Education Enterprise Network, and the Sea Plough project with IHC Engineering Business has been a huge success, attracting both regional and national interest. It's now hoped to use this project as a blueprint for other schools and in other subject areas.